Hey guys, and welcome to Cannaman TV. My name is Connor McLeod, and in this episode of Real Cannabis Stories, I get the chance to chat with Joanne Griffiths. Joanne is the mother of Ben, who was diagnosed with intractable epilepsy since a very young infant. Over the years, Ben's drug-resistant epilepsy has led to countless pharmaceutical drugs being used to manage his condition, failing miserably, and very often leaving him with harmful side effects as a result. After hearing about CBD and the potential aid it could provide to her son's medical condition, Joanne took it upon herself to investigate cannabinoid medicine further, resulting in years of independent research, countless interactions with leading medical specialists, and a continuous perseverance to have Ben's medicine funded through the NHS. So, make sure and like and subscribe, and stick around until the end, so you don't miss out on the end of episode cartoon. Now then, let's talk cannabis. So, thanks for joining me, Joanne.
Oh, lovely to finally talk to you.
Yeah, so when did Ben first have his first seizure, and when was he diagnosed after?
Well, the first time he had a huge, massive seizure was at 6 months old. We went to hospital and we went through all the usual tests to see what was wrong. And they came to the conclusion that it wasn't a brain tumor or a hemorrhage or anything like that, which was a huge relief.
Yeah.
And that it was epilepsy, and we thought, right, okay, so we should be able to treat this with medication. So he started on medication straight away. He started on phenobarbital because that's what they gave him to stop the seizure initially. We then progressed on to, well, after he had all these huge seizures, he was just in what they called a vegetative state. So he just sort of sat there, he couldn't hold anything, couldn't do anything. So we got Portage involved. We were getting him better. And my grandfather said to me, he worked in mental health, and he said he's on phenobarbital and it suppresses the whole system. So he said that's why he can't do anything. That's why he cannot progress, he can't learn, he can't do anything. So he said, you need to get him off the phenobarbital. So we did, and we switched to another one, which I think was clobazam at the time, and it was awful. He was just crying, he had red eyes, he couldn't sleep. He was in a right mess. And then we just went on to one after the other, multiple anti-epilepsy drugs, loads of AEDs basically. We then did the diet, the ketogenic diet. 12 months we did that for, or just over, with nothing. We went to Great Ormond Street, we had telemetry done and an MRI scan, and they saw 87 seizures in less than 24 hours.
Right.
And that was on 3 anti-epilepsy drugs and the ketogenic diet at the time, at very high doses. One of the drugs that we were on was unlicensed in children. We used to have to tip it out. We had to tip like the capsules out into some water and draw it up and administer it. We've tried lots of different things because you want to stop the seizures and you want him to have the best life basically he can have.
Yeah, of course. Sorry, so it's 2014, that was when you first at Great Ormond Street Hospital, when you first came across cannabis oil?
It was. Talking to parents when you go and make coffee and things like that, and you're on the epilepsy ward, obviously there's a lot of parents all chatting, and it was mentioned, and I think that was when they were first starting the trials, or they must have been getting people together, and we asked about it casually, and we were told, oh no, Ben wouldn't meet the criteria to use it. So we said, oh okay then, and we left it and we went away and we did our research, and that's when I was looking at abroad. There was loads of reports at the time from abroad about kids, you could see them seizing and they dropped some oil on their tongue and they stopped seizing. We thought, wow, this is amazing, but is it true? Because the internet is full of stuff that isn't always true. Yeah, it's very misleading. So carried on looking into it, and then in 2016 we were back in Great Ormond Street. I asked again about it because they'd already started trials and everything then, And we got told it was just as effective as any other anti-epilepsy drug, and because Ben's drug resistant, it probably wouldn't work for him. So we continued, and Ben has multiple seizures. So he has tonic seizures and he has drop seizures. So he just drops to the floor, and when he does that, you can't catch him. And he's sustained horrific injuries, cuts, bangs to his head. When he was little, they were saying to us, you know, as he gets older, if he keeps banging his orbital socket, he could fracture it, which would be, you know, you can't really repair it. Lots of different things going on in our head, and we thought, right, let's just try some of this CBD oil, you know. So we then went on a journey of lots of different CBD oils, because the Charlotte's Web that we really wanted to use, because that was the big one at the time in 2017. We just couldn't get hold of it. You know, as soon as it came in, it was sold out. So we never really had a good run on the CBD oil. It wasn't like a consistent thing. So we didn't really see any change, other than that he was a lot brighter. And even though he was having seizures, he was sort of bouncing back very quick. Not always. Some of them were quite horrific, but he just seemed a lot more brighter in himself and happier and more alert. I think more awake to his surroundings and what was going on.
Right.
So things continued. Ben then had a really bad seizure, and we had to take him to the hospital. We had to get an ambulance. They thought he'd fractured his skull. He had to have CT scan under a general anaesthetic, because he won't stay still while they do it. We then sort of got the results that he hadn't fractured his skull, but obviously it was severe. So we had they'd obviously put him back together in theatre when they did the scan and everything. And then eventually we were allowed to go home, but we put on Facebook about it, and a friend of ours had gone to Canada, and he'd been there for some months, and he went to a clinic because he has neurological conditions himself. He's an older gentleman.
Right.
And he went to one of these medical clinics, and they gave him some CBD oil. So he decided it worked for him, so he decided to buy a huge amount of it and bring it home with him. So he contacted my husband and said, would you like some of this, you know, for him? So he said, yeah, okay. He brought it back in blueberry jars, massive, like that. So yes, we got
very innovative.
Yeah, we got this jar of, I think I've still got it actually in the fridge. Yes, we got this big jar, and so we started giving Ben just a drop. So we just give him a drop of a morning, and then we just built it up just to a tiny amount. He was on drops, really. You know, we didn't measure it with a syringe or anything like we do now. And his seizures went down to 6 a day, and that was brilliant. So we told the neurologist, our local neurologist at Alder Hey Hospital, we told him about it, and he said, oh well, you know, it should be available soon, blah blah blah, usual stuff, and documented it, and that was it. And we then come away from there, and we noticed we told him as well he was getting a bit sleepy, so we decided to drop his sodium valproate. So we started to wean his sodium valproate as well, and we just come away really, and we knew that was going to run out, so we were looking at different options. That's when I come across Families for Access, and I was talking to somebody called Paul from Families for Access. So we went through that stage of talking to them. They were telling us what was going on. I didn't feel at the time that I could go to London and do all that what the other parents are doing. I didn't feel like I wanted that exposure really. Because you hear lots of stories as well about parents, you know, getting social services involved because you're giving your child CBD
Yeah,
you think,
yeah.
oh, I was a bit, a bit wary.
Understandably, really.
So then, anyway, things progressed, and the law changed. The law was going to change in July. The government panel come out, so I went back to our neurologist. We were due there in early July, and I think it was the day after it had come out, and the Paul that I had contact with at Families for Access sent me all the documents. So I sent it over to our neurologist. He filled them all in. He asked the director on all these forms. It says that the director has to sign it off to send it.
Right.
So they failed to sign it off. So then I was on the phone to the medical director saying, well, why is it not being signed off? Well, we need a meeting around this drug as to where we're going to keep it if you get prescribed it, and how things are going to be done. So we need a big meeting around it. We need a policy around it as well. So I said, okay. So then time just ticked on, and it was like, oh, well, people are on holiday, and there was lots of different excuses. And basically we got to September, and I was in Northern Ireland, and I went to see Charlotte Caldwell, and she told me then about this compassionate access that GW had.
Yeah.
And because the government panel was going to be disbanded, it was probably my only option was to go down that route, because we were running out. I think by September we'd run out, and I think the seizures were coming back, and they were coming back very, very bad.
Yeah.
So we went back to our neurologist and said, well, can you fill out the compassionate forms, and do it that way? He said yes, so we did that. We ended up in the October in hospital, and his seizures were over 25 minutes long, each one. He was having hundreds. Ben's always had about 100 seizures a day.
Right.
He has tonic and drop seizures, so it was quite bad. When they go bad, they sort of tend to be more tonic ones when he's in a really bad place. So so basically we filled that in, went into hospital. He was really poorly, and they gave us early access, compassionate access to Epidiolex. Started it, and straight away we saw like a response to it. He was just a completely different child.
Yeah.
And I think it was because he'd already been on a cannabis product that he recognised it. His body must have recognised it, and it just seemed to be really, really good. But after about it just seemed to wear off, and we were getting more and more seizures again. And so after about 2 months, it just stopped working. So we asked them again, can you prescribe, a full extract? The laws change now.
Yeah.
This is the November. Anyway, they came back to me in the December. He said he would be quite happy to do that, but he had to ask. He'd been told by the trust he has to ask the lead neurologist. So we asked them, and they said it had to go to a panel. They did a panel meeting and basically said no. And the letter I got back was no hospital in the Northwest or beyond are willing to prescribe CBD and THC, basically, until there's further guidance. So
this is even after the law has been changed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we ended up in hospital. By December, he was having 300 seizures a day. So they decided to try and up his Epidiolex to 6 mil a day, because they thought that he was getting some relief from the cannabis. They could see that he obviously responded to it.
Yeah.
So we ended up in another meeting where I asked them, they asked me, what did I know about cannabis? And I was like, well, I've been looking at it for years, It's like, my son's having 300 seizures a day, and they want him to have meetings. And I just stopped the meeting, and I just said to them, look, I said, you've got 3 options now. I said, under the circumstances, because he's so poorly, I said, you can do an intercontractual referral to somebody, that knows about cannabis, that prescribes it to children.
Yeah.
There wasn't one in our country at that time. They could revisit the guidelines, because Ben met all of the BPNA 5.2 guidelines in there. and allow his neurologist to prescribe it. I said, oh, go and get the drug yourselves. I gave them all of the details of Arwin at the Transvaal, importers that Steve Moore had given me at the time, and different people that he'd given me contact with, to pass on to the hospital. I also offered them to connect them with Tikkamolan, with in Israel, with doctors there that were prescribing, and they weren't interested.
Yeah.
So they just basically said no. We're not gonna give you it. So 6 days, Ben was just having hundreds and hundreds of seizures, lots of different medications, chloral hydrate, which I didn't want them to give him, but I didn't really have a choice.
Yeah.
They were not offering anything else, basically. So we gave him that. It's unlicensed in children. There's no evidence that it stops seizures in the brain. It only outwardly sedates the body. So when we had telemetry and they actually gave that to Ben, it didn't do anything. Ben was still having seizures, and it didn't even make him go to sleep.
Yeah.
He's so drug resistant. So we ended up basically, eventually our neurologist come back off leave. He knocked Ben out. I was asking them to flatten him with phenobarbital to try and knock the seizures off, because I was saying, well, no amount of cannabis is going to stop this right now. He was so severe.
Yeah.
So he came back and he did that straight away. He knocked him out with a huge dose of phenobarbital. We then eventually, they wanted to transfer us as well to Great Ormond Street, and our neurologist asked us, did we want to see Finbar O'Callaghan, because he was on the original panel, the government panel. So we agreed to that. We said yes, we would see him, and a referral was put in. Anyway, Ben wasn't eating, he wasn't really drinking. We were syringing fluids into him, trying to keep him hydrated, diurolite, different things.
Mm-hmm.
So we left the hospital. They said to us, well, our neurologist said we could leave. It was very awkward on there with everything going on. So we were discharged with a discharge letter saying that parents were asking for THC compounds that are illegal to prescribe.
Even though that it would have helped
even
his
though they're
situation.
not,
Yeah.
even though they're not illegal to prescribe. So we
Did you say that to the GPs and the doctors, that this is an inaccurate letter?
Yeah, my GP rang me actually. He said he'd never seen anything like it in his life. And lots of my friends that work in the hospitals had never seen anything like it at all. And he said, what's gone on? He said, I know you yourselves. I know that, what they're saying isn't really what
accurate.
I see,
Yeah.
And I told him everything that went on, and he was like, right, okay. He said, well, sometimes they treat patients textbook, and he said not everybody's textbook, and that's half the trouble, because Ben's definitely not textbook.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything's opposite. And that's the problem. So after 10 minutes, say if you have a little break from seizures for 10 minutes because he's had his cannabis, the Epidiolex, the one thing that Epidiolex does do, it reduces the length of the seizures. So although he's having lots and lots of seizures, they weren't as long as what they would normally be. So because of that, they'd just start again. So they'd start with buccal-midazolam and another drug and another drug, and then you're on chloral hydrate, and then you've done all that. So, if he has a gap and he's knocked out for 10, 15 minutes, then they'll start again and start doing the same thing again.
Yeah.
So he was very drugged up. He couldn't walk. When he came to, his seizures started to come back straight away, really. He just started with a couple, and then they just built up. He was very doped up. He was drooling. I think I sent you a video of him sort of just flat, but no real no personality. He couldn't
To be
eat
honest,
or drink.
even watching those videos, that's one of the things that makes me really angry when you're saying that obviously these doctors are giving you a letter that says we can't give you this medicine, but the state that your son was in, I have no idea how any human could come away with that kind of thing, you know.
Well, either can I. You know, I was saying to them, really, you need to be looking at my child as an individual, and not as you know. I think what they're frightened of is that if they give it to one, then the floodgates are going to open. But I think if you have to meet certain criteria, I mean, there isn't a huge amount of children that have got intractable epilepsy. It's a fairly small group when you look at other conditions, you know, and other problems.
Frustratingly as well, even when they say the floodgates will open, if that is the case, and all of a sudden there's a huge amount of people that are wanting this medicine, it's because it's effective and it works.
Well, you know, that's right. Yeah.
No, nobody's going to ask for this stuff if it doesn't work, you know. So it's like this. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I think there's more products now coming to the market that are cheaper. But unfortunately, when we did this, there was only a couple of options available because they were actually listed. There was Bedrocan and Tilray were the two actual ones that were actually listed, as well as Epidiolex. So when obviously doctors are looking at it, they're going to go for the one that's listed, not an alternative. So we kind of, that's where we were at the time, which is over 12 months ago now.
Yeah. So was that January that you had to teach Ben how to walk again?
Yeah, we had to teach him to walk again, which we did, which was really hard.
Yeah.
He's, you know, every time he has huge seizures, you know, it does take him off his feet. He does have cerebral palsy, so he does struggle. He struggles with walking. Before he was on any cannabis at all, he used to be like a little wobbly man, you know, just trying to sort of wobble around, but he's got better, and we've done things like we got a ground level trampoline, and we bounce with him, you know, it builds his strength up in his legs. We like going to the beach as well and walking on the sand, that builds your legs up as well. So we just do things like that really to try and help him, and we got him back up on his feet. We left the hospital, you know, because our neurologist felt he was better. We were doing everything for him anyway. There was nothing really that they were doing for him at that point. School eventually came back and said he could go back to school after the Easter holidays, which was great, but he was still being syringed fluid. So they were documenting that they were only managing to get 20 ml of fluids down in a day. Well, when you're on 4 different anti-epilepsy drugs at this point, it was kind of like, well, you know, he's got to flush that through his liver and kidneys and everything else now. And how can you do that if you're not taking fluids in, and if you're not really eating? And he was so lethargic and sort of drooling.
Yeah. So
in the February, after us leaving, he was in such a state, we decided to ring round private doctor. I emailed some. I emailed the one that was on the TV. It was he was in with the people off Gogglebox. I emailed him, but later I was told that he wasn't a neurologist. He was just somebody that had an interest in neurology.
Oh, right.
He wasn't a full neurologist or something. So I said, oh, right, okay. So we kept looking. We rung the Portland Hospital. I thought, well, it's one of the most
prestigious,
hospitals in London. You know, we thought, well, they must be good. We looked up the doctor that they advised us to go to. We didn't ask for cannabis. We just literally wanted somebody to see our child and to get him back really from where he was, because he just couldn't have survived the way he was. He was just in such a mess. So we got an appointment, I think it was the 5th of March. Yeah, 5th March 2019 with this doctor. And I've been talking to Hannah Deacon at this point. In February, I really connected with her. She was emailing me a little bit with Mike Barnes when Ben was in the hospital in the December and January. And then I really sort of connected with her in the February, and she offered to come with us. So we said yes, that would be lovely if you come with us. It'd be nice to meet her in person as well. So we met up with her. She came with us. We saw the doctor. Gave all Ben's notes. Ben was with us. He was sort of just sat there, not doing nothing. And the doctor said, look, I showed her his seizures, everything. And she said, you don't need to convince me. She said, I can see basically he's exhausted everything. Even his own NHS doctor says he has exhausted everything. Even Helen Cross said Ben had exhausted everything in 2016. So we kind of, she gave us a big hug and she said, oh, I will do my best. So I have to go away, speak to the hospital, because she said she'd already prescribed for one other child, and she said, I don't really want to be seen as the only person prescribing to lots of different children.
Yeah.
I want to clear it with the hospital, she said, because it has a reputation, and she wanted to speak to the pharmacy as well to see that, we could prescribe the drugs. Initially, they came back and said Tilray, and Tilray at the time, when they went to them, said that they couldn't have provided the medication. So we then looked at Bedrocan. So she went back to the hospital and said, can we prescribe this drug? And they said yes. So then we had to go through the process of getting it onto the hospital pharmacy list and everything else that they have to do, and put it in the computer and find out prices and whatever else. So Hannah gave us the number for an importer, and we gave that to the pharmacy, and they used them. It was the same one that they'd used for the Tilray with the other child anyway. So we should we do them? Oh yeah, well we just kept asking for an update. Obviously, you've got to wait until they go out and get it, and everything happened sort of very quickly. So I think it was April. We got it. Yeah, we got it in the April. We started it, and we finally got to see Finbar O'Callaghan in the May just after that. And when we went, Ben didn't really have any seizures that day. Had a couple of twitches, and that was it. And we sort of went to see him. He sat us down. He told us everything that was going on. Why the doctors won't prescribe it. They can't because of legality and this, that, and the other. He couldn't prescribe it because it was out of the area. It has to be somebody within the area. He said he would advocate that Ben's doing well on the medicine. And he said that he wasn't stopping Alderhay from prescribing, because I said, well, your BPNA guidelines, that's what they're quoting. He said, they're just guidelines. They're not the law. Yeah. He said, they're not the law. They're just guidelines. And if they want to prescribe, they can.
Yeah.
So we've been battling ever since. Obviously, we joined End Our Pain at the end of February, beginning of March. And we saw Matt Hancock. He'd said it was going to be available in several months' time. We thought, oh, yeah, well, we can do this. We can fundraise for a few months and whatever. And we did fundraising through a charity. So because as the dose got bigger, and the price at the time from the private hospital was something like £550 a bottle or something like that. It was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. How long would it take Ben to go through a bottle?
Now, 2.3 days.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
So you can imagine if we were still paying privately, it'd be about £6,300.
That's completely unsustainable, to say the least.
Yeah, totally unsustainable. So I then went to my MP at the time was Seema Kennedy.
Right.
And I said to her, look, they won't release the funds for me to go abroad and bring it home. And I said I'd need a license and everything else. I said, but I said, can I get like a temporary license? I said, or can we get, like a letter from the Home Office just to say temporarily, yes, we could go and get this medicine, because I said, we just haven't got enough in the account to get the amount that we need, for his month. And of course, it was 3 times the price of going abroad and just picking it up from the pharmacy abroad, and everybody else was going and doing that. So we were kind of like, well, I think that's the way we're going to have to go, because we just can't. It's not, like you say, it's not sustainable. I mean, even at £2,000 odd a month, it's still not sustainable, really, for a family.
Yeah.
So I went to see her, and I do it naturally. When I'm meeting somebody, I've got a terrible memory. So what I do is I click the record on, and I just record it. I recorded my meeting with Finbar as well. But it means that later on you can listen to it and you can write a letter to them and you can quote exactly what they've said.
Yeah.
So I always just click it on. So I'd clicked it on when I went to see her, and she basically said to me to go and just
break the law,
go and get it from abroad.
Yeah.
She said, because I said, well, I'd be criminalizing myself. She said, well, technically, but we got it back quickly for Tegan.
Yeah.
When they got it took off them. So this is in the June. So we said, right, okay. So I didn't even have a passport. I went to get a passport. Got sorted out and just got a flight, basically flew abroad and brought about 3 months.
Yeah.
Which was terrifying. It's terrifying. I don't want to have to break the law. I don't want to do that. I've done everything to the book all the way along. I've never broken the law. I don't want to.
You would feel like a drug smuggler kind of thing.
Yeah, well, it is. I mean, you've got to look at it and say, well, actually, you could get sentenced.
Yeah.
They could make an example of you. They could, they could say, well, we've had enough of all these parents bringing these drugs back in. We're gonna, we're not gonna have this anymore. And they could have done that.
Yeah.
We weren't stopped, luckily. I think we did it about 3 times. Well, we eventually they said that we weren't. When I spoke to Arwen, they said you're only allowed what's on the prescription now, because the government had contacted him. Somebody in the government said we couldn't take 3 months. So of course that bumped the price up, because that means that everyone's got to go every month.
Yeah.
And then Karen and Lisa had been on a documentary, and this bloke got in touch with them from. I think he got in touch with Lisa. After seeing them on this documentary, and he basically said he would like to help and do it at cost for everybody, which was great. And it just seemed to take months and months. I mean, I think the last time I went was the September, before he actually started doing it for everybody, really.
Yeah.
But that was great. I mean, it meant that we didn't have to fly anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, me and another parent, we'd gone and we met up when we went to get the oils, and we went to speak to Arwen, and we did get a discount off him. It was about 20%. So we secured a discount off him, because we said, oh, there's quite a few of us. I think it was about 20 of us at the time. I said, we're all sort of going and getting the oils from you, will you do as a deal, basically?
Yeah.
Because money was tight for everyone.
Yeah.
So there was that. We did that at one point. So there's lots of different things that have gone on behind the scenes that we've had to do.
Yeah.
And then Christmas came, and everybody, of course, everybody needs oils to see them over that time. And when you're only getting a prescription per month per person, it was really difficult. So in the November Peter Carroll, we said to Peter Carroll, you know, that he's the campaign manager at End Our Pain.
Yeah.
We said, you know, this is really difficult. We're finding that by the time they've processed at the Home Office this prescription and given them given them permission, and they go and get it, we're often seeing that our oils are running out of date, you know, and things like that. And we said, you know, it's not really
feasible.
It's not going to work. You know, we're all going to run. We were literally running out at each time. You know, we were getting to the stage where we were running out before, just as we were getting it. You know, it's touch and go all the time.
Yeah, really.
Which is stressful. It's really stressful because, you know, there's parents. We were like borrowing bottles between us, like, you know, switching between us. Can you lend me a bottle until I get this prescription through, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what we were having to do.
Yeah. Which is good to have that community. There is a community, but at the same time, it's actually really negative because there's a law in place that should prevent this. Yeah,
exactly. We you know, it's not something that you should do. We all knew that we were on the same medicine, so, you know, I was lucky. And of course we all chat. We're all part of End Our Pain. We had like a group that we can just chat away on and help one another out. And basically we go at every angle to try and get it on the NHS, you know, to widen it for everybody else. And that's what we do.
Yeah.
So he wrote the letter, and I think it was Sir Mike Penning. He gave it to Priti Patel.
Yeah.
And we got, eventually it was changed. After Christmas, obviously it's taken a long time. So Christmas was awful. I mean, the importer had to go out halfway between, so I think they went out just after Boxing Day and went and got more oils and dished them out again before, obviously, the new year. So it was hard, and of course everybody wants it all at once, so it's the supply as well. So anyway, it's changed now. They can hold 3 months supply, which is brilliant. And after Christmas, sort of, at Christmas, Ben became. We first saw a completely seizure-free day, nothing, no twitch, nothing, in August, and it was just a day, and that was it. They came back the next day, and then he'd been ill with the neurovirus, and I think he sort of reset himself in a way. And we thought, oh, this, you know, once he got better again, he just didn't have a seizure.
Yeah.
And I think I messaged his neurologist and said, Ben's just not having any seizures. So he was like, right, let's get an EEG done, see what's going on. So we had an EEG done, a prolonged one, fairly long, about 40 minutes. And they saw no electrical activity at all, no outward seizures, nothing, just internal activity, you know, little background activity is what they call it.
Right.
So we were like, oh, this is brilliant, you know. So that lasted 17 days, and then he had one drop seizure, and he broke his teeth.
Oh, man.
Oh, no, it was awful. But basically, he's just, ever since then, had seizure-free days. So each time we wean Ben's anti-epilepsy medicine, which we've weaned off Epidiolex, we've halved phenobarbital, we've halved clonazepam. We've now dropped Keppra by something like nearly 3 mil, and he's just brilliant.
See, that's fantastic, and that's directly related to. I mean, it's Bedrolite and Bedica, is that right?
Yeah, Bedrolite and Bedica. He's basically, each time we do a wean, I panicked at first because I said to his neurologist that after about a week, his seizures, like, they sort of go up. He'll have a few extra seizures up to about 11. When he was coming off earlier on, they could go up to 40 a day.
Which is still better than the 80, between 80 and 100 he was experiencing.
Oh, yeah. Well, as he got old, I mean, he was having, just before we got the Bedrolite and Bedco, he was having about 120 seizures a day, and each one were minutes long. So he was losing we worked out about 3 hours of his day, and then, you know, he was losing more because he was sleepy as well, so he was having to recover as well.
Yeah.
So now, if he has a seizure, they're just seconds long. So he might have one seizure in a day and it's 4 seconds. Well, he's lost 4 seconds of his life. He bounces straight back out and carries on with his day.
Yeah, that's tremendous.
Which is fab, you know, it's brilliant. So now when we wean, they only go up to between 5 and 11 at the peak. So they go up for a week. We have a couple of bad days, and then it comes back down, then he's seizure free again.
Right. That's fantastic. That's directly related to this medicine as well. Which is, so you're still paying for this medicine yourself?
Yeah, we're still paying for it at the moment. So we've got we're just trying all different angles. So after Christmas, we were saying, you know, we need to do something, you know, everything sort of got in the way, Brexit and different things of the campaigning. So we thought, right, let's do something. Anyway, I'd seen, you know, the big TV outside the Conservative HQ.
Yeah.
And I said, wouldn't it be brilliant if we could do that and put, you know, a big screen, you know, put it on the big screen and, you know, sort of tell everybody what's going on really and why our kids need this.
Yeah.
And one of the ladies said, oh, she was a film editor, one of the mums, and her stepson did a film for us, and another lady called Margie Malloy. She obviously helps her sister. It's her sister that's got epilepsy. She said, oh, well, I know a firm that in Liverpool that can do a big TV, you know, that has big TVs and this, that and the other. So we all sort of got together. Matt did the pictures. We did like pictures before and after posters of our children. And we just all really helped out. Dee Morris, she was phoning MPs. I was phoning MPs. We had a list. So just before the event, we phoned all the MPs, said, are you going to come to this event? Blah, 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 you know, tell them a bit about it. And we did the event and it was brilliant. You know, I went on BBC Breakfast with Hannah. Hannah and Peter obviously do loads. Peter does everything, like all of the letter writing and, you know, he more has the connections, and then you've got Tonya and Tonazzi and Sir Mike Pennin that are on the APPG, that they just raise it all the time and do lots there. Ronnie Cowan's brilliant as well as an MP. You know, we've got some really fantastic MPs that are really pushing it and trying to help us. So I went on the BBC Breakfast with Hannah and told them everything that Matt Hancock said to us on the 19th of March 2019, that we would be available to us on the NHS in several months' time, and how, you know, he understood that our children couldn't wait that long, being a dad himself. You know, you believe him, you know, he seemed really sincere and you know, that he was really going to help us. Obviously it never happened, and you know, that was we were then it was February 2020, so it was literally near enough 12 months since he'd made that statement to us. So what we did then was we caught the train, me and Hannah, down to London after that interview, and Matt Hancock was on just after us, and so they asked him, they said, were you lying to her? And he said, no. You know, it's very, he kind of said that, yeah, we know that the oils work, but we're trying to work with industry and it's too expensive. And Nye said it's too expensive and different things.
Yeah.
So we, I thought, right, okay, so, you know, then everyone's looking at cheaper options and everything else, which is fair enough. But at the end of the day, Ronnie Cowan posted something on Twitter saying about how there was a fund there for that they could use during COVID to help our children, because nobody can fundraise. How can you fundraise when you can't hold events?
Yeah, exactly.
To fundraise, how are you supposed to do that? I think Marie Curie went on and said they'd seen, their fundraising go very low. They didn't have the funds that they had before. So how can we do it? We're just one person. I'm just a normal person on Facebook with so many friends, and maybe about 1,000 people following Ben on Facebook, on his Boisterous Ben page. So I'm thinking, well, how can people do this? We're all trying to share our children's stories and trying to get some help, basically,
Yeah, it's difficult to crowdfund from the living room.
Yeah, you can't, you can do things. I mean, I've been trying with Danny Nicholson just recently. He said he would like to help do like a football scratch card thing. So we've been doing that. Right. It's £10 a team. There's 40. So, and then you get £200 if you win, if your team is scratched off. Yeah. And 200 goes to one of the kids, which is, it's only really probably just over one bottle of oil. It's a bottle and a half of oil, but it's a help.
Yeah, definitely.
There's something else that'll help. So we've been doing that recently. But yeah, we did the camp. We did the 5th of February campaign with End Our Pain, and when we got to London, Matt Hancock had said he would speak basically with End Our Pain. He didn't want to speak to the families. He wanted to speak to just the representatives of End Our Pain, which on the TV it said that he would be quite happy to meet with the families and talk to us. Yeah. But he's just not. He's just not speaking with us. We're not able to get that across. So they had the meeting, and he basically said within the next 2 weeks, I want them to leave no stone unturned, and I want this sorting out. Basically, we'll try and come to some sort of solution for it. Yeah. And 2 weeks came and went, nothing happened. I think, there are things going on. We've during COVID, we've been putting in like questions and stuff like that. Well, Peter has, Peter Carroll does fantastic work. He really does work hard on it for us all. So it's just, we're just all stuck now on this merry-go-round. We're all coming at it at different angles, trying to sort of get an NHS prescriptions through. Mm-hmm. And we're just being blocked at every turn. It's crazy. Absolute crazy. I mean, some of the things they say, well, there's just no evidence. Well, there is abroad. It's just because you haven't got your own evidence. I said to my neurologist, I said, it's very arrogant, really, of the doctors to say that other doctors, that their research is no good. I mean, how can you say that their research is no good when they've got probably the same qualifications? I thought it was quite arrogant of them, really.
Yeah, it's extremely arrogant. One of the things that you sent me over, actually, which was a great indicator of the efficiency of these medicines, was that study, the meta-analysis study that used hundreds of different pieces of research to accumulate a body of evidence, and the conclusion was, I'll upload it on the video, was that 70% of these full extract medicines work. And then when you're dealing with isolated CBD, you're down to about 40%. So it makes more sense to have full extract medicines. And then, like you said, the arrogance is painfully evident. That they're not listening.
Yeah, well, I think that's because of the way our the drug system works to regulate them. I mean, when you look at it, they're all single compounds. It's like morphine. You extract it from the poppy, but it is extracted. It's an isolate, isn't it? In effect. that they use in the hospitals. It's not pure. So I think that's where they're coming at it from a completely different angle. I mean, there's so many of our medicines that are plant-based, there's lots of them that are plant-based, but they're all isolated, and I think that's the issue, is that this works best as a whole. And for some, obviously because that study, there are some that obviously isolates work for, which is fantastic. But there's people that it doesn't work for, and Ben's one of those people. It doesn't work. He's tried Epidiolex, and it, a whole plant extract works best for him.
It's extremely frustrating. Yeah, as it's proved exactly that. And the thing is as well, that they keep putting this narrative of it's unlicensed, it's untested. I think the numbers are relatively approximate, but I think there's like 75 medicines since the beginning of 2000 that they've brought into play that are unlicensed, that have been not been subject to randomized controlled trials, and yet they're still widely distributed. So yeah, Joanne, thank you very much for sharing your story. Have you got anything to say before we get going?
I would like to ask everybody to go to End Our Pain, and there's an MP's letter which is from the 5th of February, but if they just edit it a little bit and write to their MPs and get on board and tell everybody else, share it out there, ask people to help these kids with severe intractable epilepsy gain access to medicinal cannabis, because it's just not happening. Unfortunately, people think it is because of Epidiolex, but it isn't. Our children are not on Epidiolex. Epidiolex is an isolate, and we're on whole plant cannabis. So it really does need to get out there that nobody yet has been prescribed since the law changed CBD and THC. So we need it.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Joanne, and thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks, Connor.
Thanks to Joanne for giving me her time, and thanks to you for sticking around until the end of the video. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the content. I'll see you next time.